here with this Buffalo game. They lose this Buffalo game. Now they've got to do at the Jets, which they should win. And then they'll have to win at Baltimore, which I don't think they're going to do.
Okay, also take into account the Ravens may have everything locked up by week 17. So who's to say that everyone plays the entire game, if at all?
The Ravens and the Steelers rivalry is
trust me, I've taken that
second to very few.
Trust me, I've taken that into account as well. That's why I said at least the first half. At least the first half. But going back to, you mentioned what I mentioned on Sunday, Harbaugh, all he did was hire Greg Roman.
All he did was hire the best coach for the position. That's all he did. And again, if you listen to what I said, and the underreported story about Baltimore is their defense is pretty good too. So it's not just it's a full team thing happening in Baltimore.
Okay, but you're supposed to hire the best coach for the position. It would be asinine if you went out and hired, Norv Turner to be the offensive coordinator. That would make no freaking sense. So, is he smart for hiring Greg Roman? Yes. Greg Roman is running that offense, not Harbaugh. He may be making decisions as far as whether to go for it on fourth down, but remember, Harbaugh's expertise is special teams, not offense, not defense.
But it's bad fandom, quite honestly, James, to sit and think that because Harbaugh came from as a special teams coach, and now that he's the head coach of the team, that all he does is special teams.
No, I'm not saying that's
not the way it works. That's not how any of this works.
Head coach is like the manager at a restaurant. You delegate responsibility and make sure everyone's doing their job. He's done that very well. Yes. But
so what has Tomlin done in regards to his offensive coordinator? Did he have the right? Has he put his offensive? Did he get the right offensive coordinator for the job?
Again,
of course.
Considering the talent on both of these teams, Tomlin's team has grossly outperformed what anyone expected them to do with the rash of injuries they sustained throughout this season. All right. If you were to go into the season looking at this roster, even if Ben were healthy, you could make a case for Pittsburgh probably being in the playoffs, considering what they just lost, because no one thought that Juju Smith-Schuster would take a step forward and be the primary guy. We know that James Conner could carry the load at running back, but we ripped this defense for not doing anything because they have, first-round picks at every single position on this defense in the starting unit, and they were playing like garbage for the first month. There was no way anyone had any thought. And remember, Tomlin's a defensive guy. So, as far as which rosters outperformed, I would definitely say Pittsburgh. And that's why I give it to Tomlin.
Actually, the Steelers are right where I expected them to be in the preseason. Now, they got there a different way than I expected.
Yeah, you didn't think that they were going to be 6 quarterbacks deep. So the last 2 things I'm going to add to this is Juju Smith-Schuster's been a little bit of a disappointment to me this season at 500 yards after 10 games. But I still like him quite a bit.
He's missed 4.
If the head coach is the equivalent of being the general manager at a restaurant, then Andy Reid has been spending too much time in the kitchen.
And by the way, Kyle Shanahan is over in the corner right now screaming and yelling too that no one's giving him any love for what he's done with the 49ers, because I know there was only one person on this podcast that had any faith in the 49ers, and it wasn't Charlie, who's the de facto 49ers superfan.
Wait, back, Charlie, we miss you.
I didn't know we had a Niners superfan. Sorry.
They all died out in the 90s. Tragic.
There you go. All right. Monday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. That's how I got it right.
We're going to get a copyright strike now?
Yeah. Indianapolis Colts 6-7. New Orleans Saints 10-3. The Saints are 3rd in the power rankings. The Colts are 17th. The Saints are favored by 9 in this particular game. Michael Thomas leads the NFL, 121 receptions, 1,424 receiving yards. He had his 7th game with at least 10 receptions in 2019 last week. So with at least 10 receptions against the Colts, he would surpass Andre Johnson and Wes Welker for the most games with at least 10 receptions in a season in NFL history. Drew Brees needs only 3 more touchdowns to pass Peyton Manning's record career, and Tom Brady needs 4. I had joked going into last week that Brady was going to get there first, but now it looks like Brees will actually get the record he will ultimately hold for a little while, even if Brady passes Peyton. Even if Brady ends up passing Brees somehow, he's not holding that record. It's Drew Brees' record at this point. I would love to see a competitive game here, and I don't think the Saints will cover 9, but I do think that the Saints are primed for a strong victory at Dome. Seriously, what's happened in the Indianapolis Colts? Jacoby Brissett and the Colts showed so much promise early this year, and they, as you said, James, they've fallen right off a cliff.
I would probably start with first Brissett missing 2 games and having, I don't even want to say his name, as a backup, which makes me want to throw up because that guy was putrid. How do you give the Dolphins 3 freaking okay. Other than that, T.Y. Hilton's not been healthy all season. And when he has played, he's been ineffective. So Hilton, by the way, does show up on the injury report as questionable with the calf. Even though he says it feels way better than it did last week. Dontrell Inman also in the injury report. He's questionable. It doesn't say specifically what. So, yeah, after you take out Marlon Mack, which really is not an easy thing to do as far as their run game, putting everything on Jacoby Brissett, probably not the best thing to do. But, I mean, in spurts, he's been doing it. But with limited targets, and that's really what's been hurtful. But Pod, real quick, what's the record for receptions in a year? Because Michael Thomas is the only wide receiver, not pass catcher, that the Saints have, and teams still don't understand how to take him away yet.
Let's see here. Well, let's see. Lifetime. Most pass, 143. Marvin Harrison, by the way.
143. He's at 113.
Is that what I said? You're asking these questions where I don't have it right in front of my face. 121. Sorry, he's got 121.
121. Right, and there are 3 games left. So even with 9 catches per game minimum, he's going to break the record.
Yep.
Wow. And again, he's the only wide receiver for the Saints. I don't care what they deploy on the field. He's the only wide receiver for this team.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Gosh. But Jared Cook, Terran Armstead, Kiko Alonso, Will Clapp, Andres Pete, Patrick Robinson, AJ Klein, and Zach Line all show up on the injury report for the Saints. I'm taking the Saints. I kind of want to lock this game after reading the Hilton injury, but whatever, because the Saints defense needs to bounce back from last week. We mentioned that earlier when we talked about the Niners, but there was a point in the game where I was like, oh, okay, the Saints are going to run away with this against the Niners. And their defense just, I don't know. A trick player or two got in their heads, and they lost all concept of fundamental coverage and pass rush. So, yeah, this is a bounce back for the Saints defense more than anything else.
Justin, did you give your pick on this one?
No, I'm going with the Saints. They're a much better team. Although the Colts have been disappointing. The Jacoby Brissett injury has had a lot to do with it, because he's played really well this year. And they've also just had a tough go of it playing at Houston versus Tennessee, who was red hot, and Tampa Bay, who is actually kind of hot right now. So they've also run into a bit of a buzzsaw. So they're going to lose 4 in a row, and there's going to be all sorts of hand-wringing and things like that, which will be a little overblown. But Drew Brees and the Saints are just really, really good football team. I'm sorry, Colts, you're going to lose.
I'm just scrolling through Twitter to see if there's anything that we missed. Derrick Henry says that he's going to be ready to go. So while he was on the injury report, I don't think we need to worry about Derrick Henry in that Tennessee Titans game. Frank Clark.
Why Tannehill looks good.
Frank Clark still out of practice. He's being evaluated for a stomach issue. That's not good.
Yeah, he played last week despite it and played great.
I would say, but when I read being evaluated for a stomach issue, I don't equate that to the flu. I equate that to something more more than viral. I'll put it that way. Devontae Parker, as you mentioned earlier, is still in concussion protocol. That's not a good sign this late in the week. And T.Y. Hilton is apparently returning to the practice field. So that will be good news for those who are like me, taking the Colts to cover but not to win the football game against the Saints.
Yeah, don't hold your breath on that one.
In regards to
Frank Clark, the last time you saw the
Saints
defense, they were being run over by the 49ers. Trust me, this is a pride thing. They want to bounce back.
What were you going to say, Justin?
No, nothing good. I was just going to say in regards to Frank Clark, I'm pretty sure we're going to find out soon that he got the stomach ailment after eating at a craft food truck, but that had nothing to do with the Patriots.
Well, Bill Belichick has been part of the NFL 100, and that show is just awful to watch. I can't recommend watching it at all.
I haven't. Todd, I told you when you first mentioned it, I was never going to watch an episode of this show because the whole concept is stupid.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And quite honestly, Deion Sanders actually made a good point of like, well, who's first team? We need a first team out of this so that we can actually get on the field and play this game. And they ain't going to mention a first team. That's going to be up to us. And quite frankly, I think our coverage of the NFL 100 team in the off season, where it's more appropriate to be happening than during the season, will be much better. This week, they will be releasing the offensive tackles, guards, centers, and the tight end.
Offensive line.
So the entire offensive line and the tight ends. The defense is all done.
What do you freaking do?
So they already got the defense.
Only thing left is the quarterbacks.
After the tight ends, no, they'll. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
No, wide receivers. They haven't done wide receivers yet.
Oh, they haven't done. I thought they did wide receivers already. Okay.
No, I think wide receivers are next week, and then it'll end with the quarterbacks. And as we mentioned before, there's going to be too many quarterbacks added to this team.
Yeah, of course, because it's going to be like 12 of them. But as far as wide receivers, it's going to be Jerry Rice and those other dudes, and no one's going to care. I'm sorry. Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
I mean, there are other wide receivers that were pretty good other than Jerry Rice.
Yes,
I mean, Jerry Rice is the greatest of all time, but I mean, you need another wide receiver to go next to Jerry Rice, and I'll take Randy Moss. Dude,
of course you would. And there's someone who would make a case for either Stallworth or Swan or Don Hudson or
I just want to point out, like, Steve Largent wasn't even on the list, which is an absolute crime.
Largent, yeah. And I forgot about Steve Largent. Sorry, that's what I was trying to think of.
Because he owned every single record in the record
Brown
before Jerry Rice did.
The absolute crime has been that they've added these guys from vintage teams, like pre-1950 teams, and they don't tell us why they were great. They just say, "Oh, these guys were great." Thanks. Tell me why they were great. That would be lovely.
Justin Tucker didn't make it in with a group of kickers, which again, just criminal. The dude is just incredible.
Listen, I know we all want Bill Belichick to come on a camera and actually speak effusive about the game of football because he's a genius. He's one of the best coaches of all time, but the man doesn't. He doesn't have it in him. Even I watched the HBO documentary with Saban and him talking about coaching, and Nick Saban dominates the conversation because Bill Belichick doesn't know how to talk. It's just that simple.
He doesn't like talking, period, really, especially when it comes to football, X's and O's, whatever. If you remember the 30 for 30 on ESPN, the two Bills, again, it was very uncomfortable watching that when they sat the two of them down in the room. Like, the two of them were like, we have mutual respect for each other. But you can clearly see underlying in the subtext of the line from each of them was, we still don't like each other.
By the way, Jaguars quarterback coach Scott Milinovich will become the Edmonton Eskimos head coach. So already coaching moves happening
I mean, if you're in Jacksonville, find a new job now. You're going to get fired at the end of the year anyway.
Well, that's the point that I'm making. They're already exiting Jacksonville before the season's even done to go become the head coach of a Canadian football team.